Hello everyone. Today we're going to discuss Emile Durkheim, the second major sociological theorist that we're going to cover his works. They were very seminal and important works in the formation of sociological theory, and so we want to cover them in some detail. A couple of key concepts we want to go over: social facts, social solidarity, the idea of anomie, and collective conscience. Durkheim turns Marx's question of inequality and conflict on its head. He's not concerned with the conflict that Marx sees as an agent and as an outcome of the sorts of social changes, vast social changes that were going on in Europe as a result of industrialization. Rather, Durkheim is concerned with shared ideas. There's patterns, ideals, culturally agreed upon senses about what's good, right, unifying. There can be no society, according to Durkheim, which does not feel the need of upholding and reaffirming at regular intervals the collective sentiments and the collective ideas which make its unity and its personality through reunions, assemblies, and meetings where the individuals, being closely united to one another, reaffirm in common their common sentiments. Durkheim was concerned with the concept of social facts, conditions and circumstances external to the individual that determined an individual's course of action in which the individual had no control. Think about a red light. You can pretend like it doesn't exist, but if you run it, you're going to stand very real consequences, all the way from a ticket to a traffic accident. That's a very simple example of that. Durkheim was concerned also with social solidarity, a concept that he developed that was first authored by Auguste Comte, the father of sociology, the person who coined the term, actually. Social solidarity simply means the cohesion of social groups, or how groups coalesce or hang together. This is also termed social integration, how elements of a society, individuals, groups, and so forth come together. And Durkheim saw how they come together as good and forces that sort of drove disintegration as being problematic. Much of our mid-20th century discussion of structural functionalism, which we'll examine in a couple of chapters, draws and owes a great deal of its perspective to a reading, or their reading, of Durkheim. On our continuum, remember our rational, non-rational, individual, collective continuum, Durkheim falls squarely into the collective non-rational quadrant due to his emphasis on cultural and social norms, on the maintenance of social systems, on what he called a collective conscience. Durkheim theorized that what is normal, good, and reasonable stems from what he called this collective conscience. Again, the totality of beliefs and sentiments common to average citizens of the same society. From them stem norms and their formal enactment into law, ways of dealing with norm violations, ways of dealing with what we consider to be correct, right, and good, senses of belonging, and so forth. A lot of the emphasis that Durkheim placed was on how these stem from religious life, which Durkheim studies in detail, and from general social arrangements within a given society. Although you could extend, the idea of social solidarity from religious life out into many other sorts of group activities that give us a sense of belonging or cohesion. In your first reading, The Rules of Sociological Method, Durkheim makes three salient points. First, that sociology is a distinct and separate field of study. Second, that the social sciences can use the same methods of inquiry as can natural sciences. And third, that sociology is a separate and distinct field from the then emerging study of psychology. Durkheim in this piece also puts forth a point central to early thinking in criminology and criminal justice, that you cannot have a society that has no crime. This is part of his extension of the idea of social solidarity, or social conscience as well. On page 91, basically Durkheim states that crime, or more basically deviance, serves a fundamental set of purposes. It unites people in moral outrage to the crime committed. It sets a bright line between what is moral and what is not moral. And in our collective response to it, we define what is collectively moral and immoral and construct means of social control to make sure that if it's a serious enough violation of the norms or rules of society, that we respond to it with sufficiently rigorous laws or sanctions. In your second reading, The Division of Labor of Society, Durkheim introduces another set of ideas, this time based on the labor process, or work. Durkheim was looking at the vast changes that had occurred in European society over the past 100 years prior to his writing of this book, which was in the 1870s. Like Marx, he had seen the changes that had come about. Unlike Marx, when Durkheim discusses labor or work, he does so from the perspective of solidarity. How does work bring us together? Durkheim theorized that prior to the industrial era, everybody basically did the same sort of work. Agricultural work, subsistence farming, work that people had to do to stay alive. And in this way, there was a strong sense of community and consensus based on everyone's basically being in the same situation or in the same boat. He termed this mechanical solidarity. Okay, this sort of pre-industrial solidarity that was sort of natural. People didn't really even think about it. It just stemmed from everybody sort of doing the same stuff, the same kind of work. With the industrial era, however, a new type of solidarity had to come about. Labor became specialized, with hundreds or perhaps thousands of new kinds of work or jobs emerging. There was, according to Durkheim, the possibility of an over-specialization of labor. He thought this had social consequences. In these cases, people would lose their way. The division of labor becomes a source of disintegration, according to Durkheim. The individual no longer feels the idea of common work being done by those who work side by side with him, according to Durkheim. A rigid division of labor leads to what Durkheim terms anomie. This is an important word, anomie, A-N-O-M-I-E, or a sense of normlessness, not being connected to the rules. And he saw this as a social source of psychological malaise. Durkheim's solution to this quandary was his ideal of organic solidarity, in contrast to mechanical solidarity, or a new rediscovered sense of community based on one's orientation to the other individuals who, in this new specialized society, did the same sort of work that they do. The closest example I can think of this of an example of organic solidarity in action, it happens near my home in Kentucky, where I live. There's a Toyota plant that employs about 10,000 people in Georgetown, Kentucky. And this Toyota plant, interestingly enough, has a house band made up of employees, and they play for picnics. And the workers have a strong sense of solidarity in terms of working there. So Durkheim finishes out the idea, or he fleshes this idea of enemy further in his pivotal classic work, Suicide, or Le Suicide in French. In what was perhaps the first extensive, data-driven, empirical test of hypotheses in sociology from the quantitative side, Marx did rigorous work for historical data prior to this. Durkheim studied the level of solidarity at the county level all across Europe, which is, at the time, was an extraordinary task to undertake, given they had no computers or anything like that in the 1870s, certainly. He found social, not psychological, reasons for the variability in the suicide rate in the aftermath of a big economic eruption, much like the Great Depression of the 30s or the Great Recession of 2008. It disrupted people's lives. Why, Durkheim asked, was the suicide rate not higher? And he found it in local cultures where there was a high degree of community, and this is usually based around cultures where there was a local religious parish to which everyone belonged. The suicide rates were lower than in localities where the sense of community was on the decline, which had higher suicide rates, and tended to be in larger cities or larger, more densely populated areas. Finally, in his work, The Elementary Forms of Religious Life, Durkheim examines the degree to which religious organizations and symbols, rituals, and ceremonies, rituals, create the conditions necessary for social integration, or that social solidarity, that coming together. Social integration creates a strong sense of belonging, a feeling as if you were a part of something bigger, which acts as a deterrent or a counterfactual to the forces creating social disintegration. The stronger your connection to the religious congregation, local community, sports team, fan base, voluntary organization, 12-step group, etc., the less likely you are to experience the consequences of anomie or normlessness. You have a group with which to bond with which to feel normal, with which to feel a sense of community. So, please keep these in mind as you read Durkheim, and beginning soon, we'll undertake the reading of Max Weber. Thank you very much.